Can we kill the music? I just don't like competing with it. It is nice. Thank you guys for coming. We're trying to make some changes. I know there was a little pushback on charging. It's like raising rent. Nobody likes it. We complain about it. But thank you for coming. I'm really excited about tonight. And two great guys are speaking tonight. One of which is Gary Olson. And I know Gary from, honestly, he just started showing up at Hoboken. And our first conversation, honestly, was about Y2K. Who remembers Y2K? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Gary was in banking and technology at the time. And so I asked him, is that legit? And he was like, oh, yes. But that was a big side note because I didn't realize that Gary has been involved in a whole lot of real estate transactions in Oklahoma. I don't know if, I mean, we're going to find out because I have a question, but I'm not even sure if he knows how many.
I don't know how many.
I know he told me he had as many as 70 LLCs at one point, right?
That's correct.
So Gary's done a lot. He's been really good at, but he's got a big cause now of just helping more people understand and get financial freedom. Loves entrepreneurs and loves to pour into them. And so he's a good guy to corner later and ask because he's probably been there, done that. So do we have any announcements, Keziah? No. So Keziah is kind of the behind the scenes person. I get up here and talk, but she's usually making things happen behind the scenes. So if we can, yeah, thank you.
Do I have to hold this thing or does this thing do it? This does
This thing makes it so these people can hear.
Okay.
This makes it so Andrew can catch us on.
Do I need to push a button to get it started?
Oh, yeah. Push it on.
Okay. Test. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. All right. How do you want to start? You want me to just start, or are you going to ask questions, or you want me to follow my outline?
Go.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, Gary Olson. I've got a little PowerPoint, but we're going to just kind of ad-lib because we don't have the TV here. So anyway, how I got started and who I am. Well, I grew up in Oklahoma, Osage County, if anybody knows where that is. Farm and ranching, small town kid, and Tall Grass Prairie, if you've heard of that. Halfway between Pawhuska, Ponca City, go straight north, Shidler, Grainola.
Gary, can you push it closer?
Oh, okay. And I lived in Grainola, population 36. I lived a mile north and 3 west of town. And so anyway, kind of very rural. That's what I did. And had great parents, great mentors. My dad, my granddad, they were great workers and just taught me how to work, starting with as a little kid. And since I'm doing this off of my pad here, otherwise you guys would have pictures. So anyway, you know what, I always like a little scripture in things, and one of the things that was always important to me was wise counsel. And so I put one in here. It says, "He who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm." And if you've never heard of the old deal about you are going to become what you hang around with, it's really true. So you need to watch who you hang out with. And that's one thing that's been real important to me. And I'm going to learn sooner or later how to deal with this, but okay. So what were my first investments? Well, I was kind of a funny kid. When I was 7 years old, we had the Grainola District Fair, and I figured out that we had these turtle races. And in turtle races, you know, you win or you lose, and you paid a dime to enter. And if you won, you got money, and if you didn't, whatever. Well, I figured out the best way to make money at this deal was to go up and down the roads and find turtles. So I got turtles, and I'd bring them to the district fair, and I would sell those turtles. And of course, I would always try to keep the fastest one for myself. And I made a lot of money for a kid. And that was my first business adventure.
That was when you were 7?
That was when I was 7. So then when I was 9, I wanted to buy some sheep, and I wanted to make money with sheep. So my dad took me to Scheidler, and we had a guy named Wendell Andrews, who was the president of the bank, owned the bank, Scheidler State Bank. And my dad said, okay, you need to go in. I'm like, you coming? He said, no, you're going in on your own. I was scared to death. And I went into Wendell Andrews' office, and I said, I want to borrow $90. And he said, what for? He said, well, I'm going to buy me a couple of ewe lambs. Now, if y'all don't know what a ewe is, that's a female sheep, okay? And he said, well, so how are you going to make money with 2 ewes? And I said, well, they're going to have babies, and I'm going to shear the wool and sell it, and I'm going to, you know, raise more lambs and sell those. He said, well, how are you going to do that without a ram? And I said, well, I'm going to buy them. They're going to be pregnant when I get them. And he said, okay, I'll loan you the $90. And so I signed the papers, and I got my first loan at 9 years old, and that was where I started.
Did you have to put collateral up? Any money down?
No, I didn't. I'm sure probably my dad and Wendell had talked, but it was just that I was just sweating bullets, and he thought that was funny. So
Gary, what was $90 equivalent to today?
Oh gosh,
What year was this?
that would be well, I was 9, so 52 would be 1961. So that tells you how old I am. So yeah. Anyway, and then at age 10, I bought hogs, started raising hogs. At age 11, I started raising cattle. When I got to college, quite frankly, I was making more money than I did my first year out of college, all through college. So I was always investing and doing things to make money. And so when I got out of college, I went to work for a guy named Ross Perot, if you know who that is, out of Dallas, Texas, and moved down there. I got married when I was in college. But anyway, one of the questions he asked me was, how many deals have I invested in? And I got to making a long list, and I finally wrote down somewhere over 100. I have no freaking idea how many. But one of the first things I did when after living around the world for 5 years, I moved back to Oklahoma because we had the first child, and I wanted to be where my parents were because I wanted my children to have grandparents. So anyway, I bought a daycare center, and this is 1980. Well, actually, I built it from scratch in El Reno. And as they say, the fat lady saying, if anybody remembers, Penn Square Bank got shut down pretty quickly after that. And my $550,000 investment was in the tank, and I wound up sweating profusely. But I was always in the finance industry. I worked with banks. That's what I wrote programs for banks. And so I got this idea that if I'm in trouble and everybody else is in trouble, I'll just go to bankers like Steve over there, and I'll say, hey, have you got any real estate that you'd like to sell, particularly daycare centers? And almost seemed like every banker I talked to said, oh yeah, I got one of those. And so I would buy them for 30 cents on the dollar. And I literally averaged my way out of trouble. That's how I got
Because
out.
you were losing like $3,000 a month.
Oh, I was losing more than that. But yeah, I mean, I was in serious trouble. And I had gone to my banker that loaned me the money in the first place, and I said, you know, what am I going to do? He said, well, we're going to have to work this out together.
And guys, it's 1980.
Yeah.
So $500,000 is a lot more than $500,000 today.
Yeah, it'd probably be, to build that building today would be, actually still exists over in El Reno. It's probably a couple $1,000,000, I suppose, to build it today, because it was a pretty good sized building. So that was my first real estate deal, and you know, and it was pretty painful. But I owned a chain of daycare centers. I hired somebody to run it, and that went on for a number of years. And I finally legged out of that and did okay. In fact, strangely enough, last year, this wasn't part of my deal, but last year I sold the operations and I kept the real estate and I leased the real estate, and last year I made a windfall because I sold all the property. It was totally depreciated, and I made a lot of money. So that was kind of a good deal. So sometimes, you know, bad things can turn into good things. You know, all crap is not necessarily bad. So anyway, that was mine. And let's see. The second thing I did, whoa, that's deep. Now we're going to talk in deep. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So I did the daycare chain, and then I started buying duplexes. I thought that was a good idea. Bought some duplexes, and I always liked the idea of duplexes because I thought if I can rent out one side, it pretty much covers my mortgage. And so I bought a bunch of duplexes. Those were very profitable, and I'll talk to you a little bit later about how I decided what to buy. But then actually, it's kind of strangely enough, I sold all my duplexes because I decided, y'all know what ATMs are. Well, I knew a lot about ATMs because I wrote code to drive ATMs. And I started putting those in. They had these certain kinds of ATMs, and I was making like 80% return per month on my machines. So I bought one. I said, I think I'll buy another one. And then I bought 25 more, and then I bought 25 more, and then I bought 25 more. And when I ended up, I had a little close to 600 ATMs across the United States. And
what year is this, Gary?
oh, those were in pretty much the 80s.
80s.
Yeah. And anyway, then some technology changed and some bad things happened, but I'd made so much money, it was okay. I walked away from it. So anyway, did that. Had a small manufacturing company. None of y'all are old enough to remember this, but when microcomputers used to come out, everybody had these little printers, but they needed a printer stand to sit on, and so we invented a printer stand, and we built printer stands. That was a stupid thing, but it was kind of fun at the time. I owned Heartland Press, part of it. Had some partners. They wrote Christian music. I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't do anything, but they wanted somebody that had some business sense to run the company, so I owned a Christian music publishing company with two other partners. Then I got real smart. Oh, this is before I got out of the ATM business. I decided that, why pay all these other people to put money in my machines? So one of my partners on about a couple hundred of the machines, he thought it was a great idea to have an armored car company. And so I invested, and we built armored cars out of Suburbans with 3/4-inch bulletproof glass. And then we hired guys, I always call them Barney Fives. They always carried at least one bullet. And after about 6 months, I said, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. And I got out of that. I was glad. I lost some money, but I was happy to get out. I bought a farm out west of Edmond. Has anybody ever heard of the pumpkin patch back 20 years ago? Well, that was me. My dad helped me run it, and he lived up in Perkins, and he'd come down every day to help me, and so I did that. And a lot of people, literally thousands of people went through that, so I did that. And then ultimately, I put in a road and said, because I did the numbers, and I said, I want to turn this into lots. So, I bought this land for $1,000 an acre. I put in some roads, spent, about another $500,000, $600,000. Actually, after it was all done, about $750,000 putting in roads and infrastructure. But I sold the lots $50,000 a piece. And I'm like, this is a pretty good deal. So, made a little bit of money on that deal. That was kind of smart. Sometimes you get some people are entrepreneurs. I'm full of manure. So you need to understand the difference, okay? So I had Clifford Farms, if you've seen it out there on 178th and May, Clifford Farms, that was my farm. And anyway, turned into housing development. Then I wound up buying a bunch of other, actually housing developments, some that were in bankruptcy. And I bought those and had different partners. I got into several construction companies. I probably had at least 10, maybe 15 construction companies, different people that built houses, and I helped provide the money for it. I was too stupid to lift a 2x4, but I knew how to get the money. I knew how to lie to bankers anyway. I did wind up owning a bank, and that actually was another story that we're not going to talk about because it kind of hurt my feelings. And then, let's see here, I still own a building over here at Penn and Memorial. Pretty good real estate right there. It's been a pretty good investment. If anybody knows the old Reserve National Building over on, what is that? It's on Hefner, I think. between Broadway Extension and Kelly. I had it built. Again, I'd never lived two before, but I put the money together and did that, and it was pretty profitable. Trying to think here. Bought a bunch of lots up in Cashin, Oklahoma. I think there were 66 of them originally. Turned out to be a good deal in the end. Took a lot of years, but it turned out to be okay. And then we built a bunch of houses there. Invested in a logistics company down in Frisco, Texas. It's still in there today. And a bunch of oil and gas stuff I've done. And anyway, but you want to talk about real estate. So here's some of the ones I've done. Cashin, Tuscany. I did development up in Guthrie. I did the Clifford Farms. There's several other developments. I don't even remember the names of them. Built some more duplexes. Built several housing additions. Then I got into rental houses. We bought like 20 rental houses. That one didn't turn out very well, although if we'd held on to them till today, we'd be in great shape. But we dumped them and tried to get out without losing any money. I owned a bunch of lots and houses over in Luther. I got into some raw land, and that was kind of a good deal. We broke them up into 5 and 10 acre tracts and sold them off. And
Tell them the story about that.
Which one?
With Tracy.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, this was kind of cute. I didn't know Tracy Williams, if anybody knows Tracy, but I didn't really know him, but my partner and buddy, Joe Bowie, if anybody knows him, Joe and Tracy were good friends, and Tracy was wanting to get into development of real estate and didn't have the money or financing, and I never really wanted to be partners with Joe. I went to church with Joe, but I always thought Joe was a little bit wound tight for me, and so, but he turned out to be the best partner I've ever had, and we've been partners for 30-some years. But anyway, so they had some lots that were going to be in an auction, and they said, can you get the money? And I said, sure. So I went and borrowed, I think it was $250,000, $300,000. But Tracy went to the auction and bought them for like half that. And but before we got closed on the loan, Tracy already had contracts on every single lot. So that turned out to be a pretty good deal too, because we just had to close on the loan and start closing on the lots. And then after that, Tracy wanted to buy some land up with Guthrie and break it up into 5 and 10 acre tracts. We'd buy a section, we'd do that, and then we did another one, did another one, did another one. And I don't know how many thousand acres we did doing that. And then I had another 3,500 acres down in Goolsby or south of Norman somewhere. I've never been on the property, but another one of those deals, Tracy said, hey, we need I think up to $3 million, can you do that? And I called my banker and said, hey, this is what I need. And he said, sure. And Tracy bought it for about half. I think it was $1.7 million. And I think we went up $680 an acre, $780 an acre, something like that. And we marked it up to $2,500 an acre and broke it into 5 and 10 acre tracts. And we made the loans to the people on 20-year AMs at 12%. And I still get a check every month. So it's been it's about 20 years into that one. Let's see. But you wouldn't, it's always fun to talk about the successes, but let me tell you, the failures really suck. But I've had plenty of failures too, so don't put anybody on a pedestal, especially me. But I have to tell you, I feel blessed. Along the way, I think God was involved in all these things because he had things for me to learn. And I've learned a lot, and hopefully I've corrected some of those mistakes. Let's see here. I put together a deal. You probably have seen it. It's Covell and I-35. I put together that deal, but it was too big for me, and I made an offer to some guys and to take over half of it, and they came back and made me an offer to take over all the debt and all the liability, and I said, let me think about it. Okay. And so anyway, but I did help put that one together, and I made some nice money on it, but I'm not in it today. Did another deal with Covell and Kelly. I told you about that one. Oh, yeah. Well, and so far as just investments, I have a lot of other investments I do. I'm not going to tell you about all those. So what kind of returns do I look for? The first thing I do is I try to look for the downside on any deal. I'm always I try to not do anything that has more than a 10% downside. That's kind of been my thing. So if I buy $1 million piece of property, I'm thinking I should be able to dump it for, 90 cents on the dollar. And as long as I feel like I can handle that, I'm okay with that. Then the upside, if it's raw land, to be real frank, I always look for 100% on the upside after my development costs. I want to make at least 100%. And then on houses, I've had as many as 86 rental houses at a time. And those, I've always gone into those pretty much with the expectation of making $100 per month per house when I buy it, with the idea that I'm going to pay down the mortgage and over time pay it off, and it works. And I've sold most of those off because, quite frankly, I'm old enough and I just don't want to hassle with it anymore. So I've pretty much sold all but maybe a dozen, I guess, off. On construction jobs, one of the reasons builders always liked me is because I would do a deal and I'd say, hey, look, you build a house, we'll split the profits. And we split them 50-50, and that's been, and a couple guys, quite frankly, we were building some really large houses a couple of years ago, but we ran out of lots, but I was taking 30% because it was okay. I was happy. We were building $500,000 homes and we were making plenty of money on it. So that's kind of what I look for there. On commercial properties, like the buildings and stuff like that I own, I really look to make 10 to 20% return. And that's after my debt service. And when I say, I'm really talking about return on cash. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Not, because to me I want to pay the debt, but I want to make at least 10 to 20% on my money. Okay. That was the answer to the other question you had. As far as, I did get a PhD. My brother has one, and I don't know if y'all know PhD. It stands for piled higher and deeper. Anyway. I got mine, and I always say I paid cash for it because I've had a lot of losses, and you got to learn from your losses. That's just the fact. You just got to learn from them. And the things that I would say that I learned the hard way was I need to be closer to what the books are. I need to watch it closer. I mean, I've had CPAs involved and bookkeepers involved, and they weren't necessarily looking out for me. I guess I just assumed they were. And, I would tell you, keep your eyes on it and try to make sure you have a third person, keeping their eye on it. The other thing I had, I didn't mention this, but I used to own all the Annie Ann pretzel stores, if you know about those, in Oklahoma. Had 8 or 9, I forget how many. And I remember one of the problems I had in that deal, and I only lost $200,000 or $300,000 on that deal, so it was a pretty good deal. If you're looking for a way to lose money, get in the food business. Anyway, but what I didn't really do is I didn't really understand when I hired different people that they didn't have the same work ethic. And I'm like, man, oh man, that's just a huge problem. You got to make sure you find people that are hard workers. And, I don't need the smartest guy. I just want somebody that I can depend on showing up and doing what they need to do, and that they good ethics. So the other thing that I find in getting my PhD is make a decision sooner rather than later. Don't drag out decisions. Cut your losses. For my last 15, 18 years before I retired, I've actually retired 3 times, but that's another story we'll tell another day. But I would tell you, cut your losses. If you at some point you got to decide it's no further. And if you don't, you have all this stress on you. So cut your daggum losses. I had a deal, the guy actually tried to buy me out, and he was a pain in the butt. It turned out he just wasn't at all what I thought he was. And he offered me a premium to get out. And my other partner, who was my nephew, you actually might know him. His name is Richard Crow. He owns a company called Ground Zero that makes storm shelters. And we were in on this deal together. And Richard says, hey, if he's going to pay us a premium to get out, then there's something we don't know. We need to stay in. And I said, Richard, this guy is a pain in the neck. He's been a pain in the neck from the day we signed the document. And I said, and we had $500,000 tied up, and he offered us $600,000 to get out. And I said, think about all the stress. Wouldn't you rather just put the money in your pocket and not have to talk to this guy again? And so that's what we did. And I think sometimes the best decision you make is to walk away. So that's part of the getting a PhD. Come on, how do you, there you go. So how do I recover and what I learned? Like I said, be willing to cut your losses. I mean, I had a great deal. In fact, this Quail Springs Mall, all that land behind there, we had bought it at a great price, but my partner wouldn't sell it. We bought it for $1.50 a foot. I'll even tell you the story. We bought it $1.50 a foot, and we had offers for $6 and $7 a foot. And he go, oh, that's not enough. Well, after this went on, and I'm like, I'm sorry. And there was actually several pieces of property in the deal. And I finally said to my other partner, Joe Bowie, I said, Joe, look, every time we meet together, it's the same old story. This guy just won't sell anything at the price, and all we're doing is accruing debt. So it was on a Friday morning about 8 o'clock, and I said, Joe, I think we just need to make an offer to get out. And we went to the guy and we said, hey, we want out, but as long as you'll take over all the liability. And he said, okay. He wanted us out. And we were happy to get out. And he lost it all. So, and some of the guys came in, Roddy Bates, if you know Roddy, and Mike Dillard, they came in, Raptor Properties, and they've done quite well with all that property and some other property that we had. So I'm always kind of big on, if you got the wrong partner, get rid of it. You know, the other thing is if you have properties, like I had some houses in some small towns, and I'm like, it was difficult to manage, and I just said, you know, I was like, get out and break even. So again, that's cutting my losses. The other advice I'd tell you is don't be greedy when you've already exceeded your expectations. I think way too many people want to wait until they want it always looks great. I'm a firm believer if I can get, meet my expectations and get out, it's time to go. Be willing to make a nice profit. And this is big to me, but I always say trust in Jesus Christ. He's going to win in the end. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to keep doing what I need to be doing, do the right thing, and that's my deal. And he asked me a question, said, well, what would you do different? And I would say, I have no regrets. I have loved my life. I've embraced all my losses and said, hey, these are just training ground. This is a PhD. And I hold no ill will towards anybody that, things just didn't work out. It's just, things happen. So that's what I would tell you.
Gary, I knew you would say that because I asked you that once, and that's what you said. And I wanted you guys to hear that like Gary just went through a lot of difficulties. I mean, Gary, we don't have all the wins without some losses, and Gary has had some losses.
Yeah.
Gary can tell a lot of stories about losses, but
I got a lot of stories.
But I asked him that at one point. We were having lunch, and I said, Gary, if you could go back and redo it, and he said, I wouldn't do anything different because every time I fail, he said, I learn from it, and I wouldn't be who I am today without experiencing that. So I wanted you guys to hear that, though, from Gary, that
so true.
Fails are a good thing.
They are a good thing. I think you got to ask your questions when you're of the why and how I got started. And to me, it's like the how is finding the right partners. Know your end game, know what you're trying to get out of it, decide how much is enough. As an investment advisor, I see this all the time. People are continually doing deals, and I'm like, why don't you stop and, you got enough. I mean, where's enough? And I think people don't do that, and they should. And the why I did what I did has always felt like I read a book when I was in college. Actually, James and I read this book together, and it was Think and Grow Rich. And it was a great book, and it talked about, give to your church and give to yourself, pay yourself. And I always remember that. And the other thing is that you have to learn how to use money. You have to learn how to use leverage, and you have to learn how to use people. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but if you can employ people and make money off of them, that's a great way to do it. And so I tried to leverage time, people, and money. And my purpose, quite frankly, has always been spiritual. It's been my family. It's been my physical life and my financial life. Those are I call them the four square. That's what I do. And here's my guiding principles in the end. And I've had these for, 40 years. That's if you give and give until you can give no more, then give some more, you'll gain more than you ever imagined. And I learned that 40 years ago from a guy named Zig Ziglar, and I doubt if any of you know who that is, but he told me that. I got to meet him and got to know him a little bit, and it just made sense to me, and that was 40 years ago. Actually, it's closer to 50 years ago. But
Can you say that quote one more time?
Sure. If you give and give until you can give no more, then give some more. You'll gain more than you ever imagined. And finally, if you got to start. That's the thing. I get so frustrated with people about getting ready for retirement or even giving to your church. I've told people for years, it's not about giving 10%, it's give. Start. I don't care if it's $5 a month. Start. You're going to feel better if you start. You got to start. So that's about all I got to say about that. He asked me one more question. He said, what's next? Well, my wife and I, we have 3 kids. One's a fireman. One is an inner city school teacher. Very, very mission-minded, all my kids. And my 3rd child has Down syndrome. His name's Preston. And I wouldn't be surprised if half of you know him because we were in the Tetons last week. And we were 2.5 miles into a 5-mile track up in the mountains. And we heard someone yell out, "That's Preston!" And we're like, are you kidding me? How can that be? But it was true. But we have started 20-some years ago. We started an organization called Wings up in Edmond. It's a community for adults with special needs, provide social opportunities, work, and homes for adults with special needs. We'll be moving into our new building, which is a $20 million project on Wilshire between Kelly and Eastern in about 30 days. Another thing we started was a camp for adults with special needs. We did that with the Baptist group down by Falls Creek, and we do that. We work a lot with single moms, and we work a lot with people coming out of prison. Those are our missions. That's what we do. And then the other thing he said is, what is next? Oh, and Finacity. And Finacity is an app that we developed. You can get it. It's on your iPhone or on your either phone. It's in both app stores. And we basically trying to answer 2 questions. And I promise I'm trying to wrap this up. I feel like I'm going way too long. But our passion is to help every family to minimize their stress in case of emergency, incapacitation, or death. So we try to help you get organized, get your budget, get your finances under control, make sure you're buying your insurance right, make sure you're just doing things right. And we don't sell any products other than just memberships and Finacity. The other thing we do is we also help you document your life story so that your spouse or family will know your life, your history in case of death or incapacitation. And we do that. In fact, I brought mine. And this is, whoops, more stuff came out than was supposed to. But this is actually my story. And it's Home on the Range. It's on Amazon. But anyway, and all it really is a collection of stories about growing up in the Osage. And if you want one, that's too bad. They're sold out. I bought them all. So you can't. But anyway, the truth is, if you really want one, if you'll make a donation to Wings, I'll give you one. And if you want one, and you make a donation to Wings, I'll give you one. So anyway, that's my story. And anything else you want to ask?
What kind of questions do you guys have? I mean, it's not every day you get somebody with 40 years of experience. Andrew.
I want to know about those I've done one myself, so I'm curious, tell me more.
Well, the first one was about 18 years ago, and I decided to get out of the data processing business, and I just decided to focus on all these assets I had, because I had like 86 houses, I had several construction companies, and I had a couple things that just weren't going well for me, and I took some heavy losses, and I said, I'm just going to quit and try to figure out this mess. And I spent a few years doing that. Then I kind of retired from that, and along the way, I did a lot of small investment things and some large investment things. But I became a financial advisor, and that's actually a fun story, and I'd love to tell you, but it would take too long, so I'm not going to tell you. But I became a financial advisor, did that for 15, 16, 17 years, whatever. I'd have to back up and figure all that out. But I retired about 3 years ago from that, and a guy came to me and asked me about what he would do in his life, and he found out about basically Finacity, but I was doing it on paper. And he said, well, I'll do that. So I helped him get started doing what Finacity does, and it began to look like a job. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I said, we're either going to automate this thing or it's not going to happen. So we wrote an app, and we spent $300,000 writing an app, and it's called Finacity. So, and I will give you one little commercial. If you are interested and you want to be part of Finacity, we serve about 140 single moms and about 200 people that have been coming out of prison. We give the app to them for free. So if you're interested and you wanted to, you could go to finacity.com. It's finaciti.com/single mom. That's single mom, one word. And you can sign up and you can say, I want to donate $100 a month to support single moms, because we give it away to single moms. And we also give it away to the guys coming out of prison. But I don't have an app or a page for the guys out of prison, so just understand we're going to use it for both. But we currently we have about 400 that we give it away to, and anyway, that's what we do. So, and if you do that, I'll give you a code so you can get it for free yourself. So, anyway, if you want to support single moms and people coming out of prison, because that's kind of our mission. So, any other questions?
How do you navigate what's a shiny object syndrome versus what's actually a good deal? Like I saw a water park for sale recently, and I looked at the numbers and I'm like, well, if they actually come and whatever, it'd be a good deal. I'm like, I'm probably not gonna have a water park.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, numbers can lie, and people lie, and I've done a lot of deals. Like my logistics company, we were actually doing about 43% of all the postal injection for Amazon in the United States, and we hit about $330 million. And then Amazon said, we're going to take that in-house. Well, we had a $330 million company with all the expenses underneath that, and they literally shut us off like within days. And so we had to fire people right and left, and today we're 13 years in, and today we run. But my point is, the numbers were good, but the problem is now we're back down to like $75, $80 million a year in revenue, zero Amazon business, but we do a lot of things I can tell you about. But so, numbers can be deceiving. I think you really have to dig into the numbers. And but I love real estate because I feel like there's an underlying asset that I can typically get out from under, except for in 2007 and 8 when everything was in the tank. And but the truth is, I prepared for the downside. I've always, from the time when I was a kid, I always saved money. I mean, my last year in college, I made 2.5 times what I made my first year out of college, because I had cattle and hogs and all kinds of stuff, and I worked in a pool hall and sold books door to door with a friend of mine whose son happens to be sitting back here, and we made a lot of money doing that, and it was a great time. So anyway, every deal's independent, and I look at deals every day. If you've heard of 820, the solar company, I was the second investor after Tony Capicelli's dad. And it's because I knew Tony's character. I knew he was smart. I knew he could make it happen. And to me, that was most important. So when he asked me, I didn't really care about the numbers with Tony. But there are other deals I look at, and it's all about the numbers. Real estate in particular.
Gary, I had a question on here. Do you ever get caught up in the story
Oh, yeah.
and not the numbers?
Oh, yeah. I've done a lot of dumb things. Yeah. I mean, like that stupid armored car company. I mean, my partner, he just kept going on. And Joe Bowie and Rollin Nash were 3 partners, okay? If you know Rollin, he's a lawyer. And Rollin just, for whatever reason, he just thought that was the greatest thing. Well, we always had a deal that said if we don't all agree, the answer's no. And 2 of us said no. And Rollin kept saying, I think you really ought to look at this again. And we kept looking and kept looking. And
He was a better negotiator.
And we did it. And then about 6 months into it, I said, this is stupid. And we got out. I did a deal at a big set of apartments, and everything on the numbers looked great. I mean, I had a 64-unit apartment complex. Everything looked great. But I didn't count on somebody cutting all the copper off at the floor and stealing all the units. And, and then I wasn't expecting to find asbestos on all that popcorn ceiling crap. And, and so $250,000 here, $250,000 there. After a while, you lose money. So you just have to be real careful. Due diligence, due diligence, due diligence. Sorry. Yeah.
Sounds like you've worked with quite a few partners. How did you find the people to partner with on these deals?
Almost everything I've ever done has been relationship driven. And I will tell you, Rollin Nash and I went to church at Council Road Baptist Church, and he was my lawyer. And Craig Bolte, CFO at Paycom, was my CPA, and I trusted him emphatically, and I trusted Rollin. And Rollin said, why don't you let me in on one of those deals? And he saw my ATM deals. And I said, no, I'm doing it by myself. He goes, no, I need on that. So after a while, I'm like, okay. So I let him in on some. And then he was like, but don't tell Joe. He's my best friend. I said, well, that's okay, because I don't want Joe in this deal. So for about 1.5 years, 2 years, I would never do anything with Joe. And then finally, Rollin brought me a deal, and I said, I'm not going to do it. He said, well, if Joe does it, will you do it? And I said, okay. And it was the best partnership I've ever had. It was Joe Bowie, Rollin Nash, and myself. Best. Unbelievable. And it's because we all had the same ethics, same morals, and we agreed to agree. And if we don't agree, if anybody doesn't agree, it's a no. And that's why I've never seen the landing down south of Norman, because Joe said, he wanted the money. I said, okay, I'll get it. So and I always was the guy that went and got the money. That's kind of was my deal. So.
In regards to the partnerships, is it always, that conversation always is at the beginning? The moral, the ethics, the agreement?
Yeah, it's all about character. I mean, let me tell you, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody. Joe, Rollin, me, all of us make mistakes. Every partner I've ever had made mistakes. But sometimes there's character issues. And like the one I told you about with my nephew and I, that was a character deal. And we got talked into it by a Christian friend. The numbers looked great. We had a lot of economic development dollars that were being put into it, and everything looked great. But you know what? As soon as we signed those papers, his personality changed. And I should have dug in more somehow. I don't know how I would have done it, but I was just glad to get out of that one. But yeah, you always do things with people you know and trust. I've always, 100% of the time. But I'm not saying everything's perfect, because one guy I did a deal with, and he just had a terrible work ethic. I never knew that. I mean, he would drink coffee till 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, and I caught him. And I'm like, what's going on? And, after about 6 months of watching it, I waited too long before I made a decision. And I waited 6 months before I finally fired him. And I was just throwing my money away with that guy. And, but I didn't know. And he literally did it every day. And he kept saying, well, I'm working while I'm drinking coffee. Well, every time I saw him, he was with his friends at Panera Bread. And I'm like, so anyway, that's one of the reasons I learned to cut my losses on people. So anyway, yeah.
What's your favorite deal or favorite way to make money?
You know, I've been an investor for a long time, and I'm talking about in the stock market. And I think it's diversification. I mean, when I was in 2008, I was 95% real estate. And that was stupid, you know, because luckily I had the cash flow because I had a lot of leases and I mean, I had income, and so I could cover the carrying cost, which is what he worries about, is carrying cost. And I mean, and so I was able to weather the storm because I prepared. I always tried to be prepared. And I remember when I was in Dallas, Texas, the second time I lived there, and we had a situation there, and I had just a disaster happened, but I had put enough money away, you know, and it covered. And I know I'm being a little bit vague there, but I had enough money that I put away that I could cover the cost. But the real point was, I was living around people that were made just as much money as I did, but they weren't preparing for the downside. And I saw a lot of disasters, a lot of bankruptcies. And you need to prepare. And diversification is a big deal. So anyway, that's my big deal, diversification. Yeah.
Speaking of reserves, you being prepared, did you set a certain percentage of your income aside, or was it asset dependent based on how much you wanted to?
It was cash.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, Think and Grow Rich, the book, from the time, not counting all those little stories I told you about before I was out of college, but when I was in college, I had a lot of money put away. I mean, I paid cash for a brand new car when I was a freshman in college. I mean, and then I totaled it and I bought another car. And, you know, and I mean, I just have always, but that Think and Grow Rich talked about paying yourself and giving to the Lord. And I did that. And I would tell you, in the beginning, when I was young married, I was broke. My wife used to go nuts. She's like, everybody else around us they'd have more stuff. In fact, what do you want to cut this
About
off?
5 more minutes.
Okay. This is a true story. We were in Chicago. I was working for EDS. I was making pretty good money. And we got an Amway. And we were, and everybody in Amway, they were always buying these Cadillacs and stuff. And I'm like, I don't buy things that depreciate. I just am not going to do that. And so I drove a Volkswagen Rabbit. And I was making more money than almost all of them. I was making a couple $1,000s a month from Amway. And I'm like, you're idiots, because you go out and you buy a Cadillac and you're not making any money. You're losing money. That is not a smart decision. And that's kind of just the way I've always been. And my wife she was okay. In fact, when we got in Amway, it was funny. I remember the first time we showed it that plan, we had like we had 6 people over that night in our apartment in Elk Grove Village, Hoffman Estates, or Palatine, Illinois. And we borrowed chairs from the church to sit on. So they had the name of the church on the back of the metal chairs. And then I had a 10-inch black and white TV. We didn't even have a bed because Sears wouldn't sell us one because we had no credit, because I'd never had a credit card. And I'm sitting there telling them how they're going to get rich in Amway. And I'm like, and 4 out of those 6 signed up. I'm like, they're stupid. But you know what? My wife was wonderful. She was just wonderful. She was okay. She said, you know, I get it. Not a problem for me. And so we just never spent money we didn't have. Never have. That's just been our deal. Don't spend money you don't have.
Yeah, you talked a lot about kind of relationships and even how your faith plays into that. How do you balance relationships, but with also business and return and investments, right? Sometimes those are in conflict. How do you think through that?
I don't know that I could say I have a problem with that. My wife and I, we do a lot of mission work. We support a lot of missionaries. We've sent our kids around the world. Our kids have traveled more places than we have. And we're today, I mean, my wife teaches bell choir for adults with special needs. My wife started a choir at Henderson Hills Baptist Church 25 years ago, choir for them. We started 25 years ago, a camp down there. We taught young youth and young marrieds for 37 years. I don't know, we just invested in people. And, you know, I think it goes back to if you give and give until you give no more and give some more, you're just going to win. And then I'd say the other thing is, don't live in bitterness. Never. Forgive and go on. Don't live in bitterness. When something bad goes happen and you feel like you've been done wrong, forgive and go on. I mean, just forgive and go on. And love them. I mean, God loves everybody. Now, whether they love him, that's another story. But I'm telling you, that's just the way I look at it. And so there's not a person in here that I don't think, there's not a person here that's perfect. And I certainly am not. So I want grace, so I give grace. And that's what I got from Jesus. So anyway.
All right, let's give him a round of applause. And you got one more, Jack? One?
At what point in the journey do you start enjoying the wealth and what you've created? Like, did you ever feel guilty for buying a car, buying a house, or whatever?
I never bought a new car until, I don't know, not that many years ago. I always bought used cars because I thought I was something stupid. And I mean, right now, this is funny. I don't know, I guess this is being a little bit transparent, but when COVID happened, I went out and bought one of those stupid diesel Denali GMC 2500s, and it was just under $100,000. And I'm like, that was stupid, but I did it. I just don't believe you should do stuff like that unless you can afford to do it. And quite frankly, and if you can't afford to give more than you do that, then you hadn't ought to be doing that. So I drive right now. I'm driving a car. I gave it to my son. I bought it back, which is kind of a little stupid. But but I drive a 2021 Buick Enclave with a 96,000 miles on it, 94,000 miles. So it's just not. It doesn't bother me. I could care less. You know, it just doesn't bother me. So, you know, you can put lipstick on a pig. Maybe that's me. So.
You have a question?
I do, actually. So I'm all about investment. I love investment. Okay.
You love what?
I love investment.
Oh.
Okay, I'm with you on that. But I also like nice things, right? So it's a little personal.
You like what?
Nice things.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Cars, jewelry,
Yeah.
you know, all the nice things. So you talk about God the entire night. I'm a godly guy. You can't take it with you, though. So
Boy,
you
can't?
You can't take
I didn't know that.
Right. So I fight that dilemma every day, though.
Yeah.
Because I just had a buddy die, 26 years old. Okay, made good money, was very frugal, and then that kind of opened my eyes. It's just you can't. So this is a battle that I'm fighting every single day. That I have these guys, and then there was a story that the Sandy worker, he worked for 76 years. Okay, made almost minimum wage, saved every penny, died before he got retired. So just it's not really about real estate. This is more about just you, because you're very successful, and it just gets a little deep. Because I do fight that battle every day about between investing and the nice things in life. How do you fight that?
Can I want to talk for a second, because Gary can answer this, but I can answer it a little bit for him. And what I know Gary to be about is to invest and to make some money, but he is all about taking it with him, but he does it in the form of giving back. So he's giving it back to the community. He's starting these different things, and he's constantly, and that's why I wanted him here tonight, because Gary has a heart for entrepreneurs. He has a heart for people in need. He has a heart for single moms. And what Gary is doing outside of this community is huge as far as taking it with him. And he knows he's not going to take the dollar bills and the gold and the silver, but he knows that there's a reward. and maybe that's not even his motivation, but if you listen to him talking about Zig Ziglar and Napoleon Hill, it's very much about giving back and not about.
I agree with giving back, for sure. I'm just saying you might as well enjoy it while you're here, too.
I would agree. You got to enjoy but you need to enjoy the
Yeah,
journey.
The
You
other
know,
day I pull over to help a guy get $500.
Yeah.
I give back every day. I'm talking about if you're successful, like aren't you, like I have friends that are so frugal, I'm like, you might as well enjoy it as well. Why is that so different? Because I have friends that are just like you that don't. You say, I drive this, I drive that, but why don't you enjoy your wealth?
I do enjoy my wealth.
He does.
I'm having fun. I mean,
as in what ways? How do you enjoy your wealth?
well, I got back last night from fishing in the Gulf, you know, for 4 days with my oldest son, you know, but that's not it. You know, I think here's what drives me. And I heard it the other day and I wrote it down. Actually, I had it on one of my slides, but it is, what's my purpose in life? That's not it. It's what is his purpose in my life. And I just try to remember that. But I enjoy the journey. It's never been about the prize. It's never, ever been about the prize in my life. It's never been about, I'm going to make $2.5 million on this deal. You know, it's always been about, I enjoy the journey. I'm with you, I had one deal, 9 years in a lawsuit. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court in Oklahoma. I had 100%, I won every single appeal all the way through the deal. And it was a nightmare, but you know what? It was upsetting. There's stress times, you know. I mean, I've had lots of stress, but I always look back and I go, I enjoy the journey. And my wife has been fabulous. I mean, here in about December 21st, I'll be married 50 years. Wow. 25 happy. I'm 50. So, anyway, but no, I just say you need to learn to enjoy the deal. The car wasn't important to me, but one of my best friends who I had lunch with today, he drives $100,000 and some vet, and I love it, and I don't care. I think it's crazy because he's bigger than me, and they can't fit in that stupid thing, but he loves it. But he loves cars, but that's what he enjoys. But I tell you what, he's a giver. You know, he gives. And I'm like, if you just give, and that's why I tell people all the time, if you just learn to give $5, give $10. To the guy on the street. You know, I remember one time my nephew told me a story. He was coming back from vacation. He said, you know, they had like $600, $800 left over from the vacation. And he said they were walking out of the restaurant up in western Kansas. And he said, what do you kids think? And they said, well, why don't we just buy everybody's lunch here in the restaurant? And so he told the lady, he said, I'm going to walk out of here. Here's, I think it was like $800. He said, I'm going to buy everybody's breakfast, but I want you to do it, or lunch, but I'm going to walk out of here. And I thought, man, your kid, he just told the story to his kids and his wife and then all those people there, and he never got credit for anything because he walked out the door. And actually, I shouldn't tell you the story because I already told you who he was. But anyway, but he's a giver. But
he didn't need credit though. He gave because he wanted to.
He gave because he wanted to, and he didn't need the credit. And yeah, you got to have the right motives in life. And you know, if you can't enjoy what you're doing, you change. I mean, anyway, sorry. Where are you at?
Let's give him a round of applause.